Hi everyone, my name is Adrian. Hope you all are having a great day. But I'm just going to jump right into this situation here. I decided to interview the assistant director of admissions at my current university, who, for the purposes of this video, will be referred to as Tim. He actually told me about a story about a year and a half into his first admissions counselor job at a previous university, where he noticed that when he went to lunch, one of his coworkers and another admissions counselor were actually drinking inside of the vehicle. Again, this violates the no alcohol policy of the university. At this time, I'm going to refer to the other counselor as Dan, and the supervisor in the situation as Emily. So Tim, my current assistant director and admissions counselor at the time, didn't really know what to do because, on one hand, he felt he was morally obligated to discuss the situation with a supervisor, but at the same time, Dan was actually had become a really good friend. He was somebody who had been working for the university for about 4 years, and when Tim had started, Dan was actually the one that kind of showed him the ropes, kind of took him under his wing and helped him out as he kind of asked any questions and things in relation to admissions. So again, he was kind of torn between um, this friendship that he had made and getting somebody in trouble, I guess, if you want to think of it that way, somebody who's superior to him in time there at the university, and then his moral obligation to make sure that somebody's notified of this because it's clearly a violation of conduct code. Um, in regards to the Nash reading, there's a couple things that I took from it, and from the situation, and then using the readings, I kind of noticed some of the stakeholders, of course, being Tim, Dan, the supervisor Emily, and in a more broader sense, the whole entire university, because it could be that at any time, for example, if Dan had been drinking at this time at lunch, it could have been happening other times. Going in there, speaking to other students, or at any time representing the university, if that came to light, or that affected his work at any point, the university could be seen in a negative spotlight. Negative press or media coverage could have also been an effect of this situation. Again, Emily, the supervisor, as a stakeholder, making sure that she's notified per the policy and making sure that she can do her job as well. And then Tim, finally, as Dan we know is the main stakeholder, but Tim as well, seeing as he wants to make sure that if he does say something, there's proper protocol and things put into place. But what are the effects if he doesn't say anything? So again, these are the major players. What makes sense? What makes this an ethical situation, was basically that alcohol itself is not allowed on campus, nor are employees able to consume the alcohol while they're on the job. A few possible outcomes of the decisions that could possibly be made were that Dan could be fired altogether from the university. The university can also possibly put him on a probationary period. Tim and Dan can actually lose their friendship. And then finally, I thought about Tim could possibly get in trouble if he didn't say anything to a supervisor, and if anybody did find out about the situation and knew that Tim knew and didn't say anything, this can cause him to lose his job and for Dan to lose his job as well. So all these different things are all going on in his head. Doesn't really know what the best solution will be at the time, but these are the things that I was also thinking about while he was telling me the situation. Possible alternatives, instead of just straight going to a supervisor and talking and telling on Dan, were that Tim could actually have a conversation with Dan to let him know that this can't continue, and that if it does, at the next point he will have to say something. But having consideration for Dan and their friendship, he thought he would just be able to maybe talk to him one on one before it escalated to the next level. Some background beliefs on this situation are that Tim is still fairly new at his job, at his position, and he doesn't want to ruin any chance of possibly getting promoted or proceeding in higher ed. But at the same time, he also doesn't. He also values a friendship, and he doesn't want to be disrespectful or rude to Dan in that situation and kind of blindside him with that. My own personal beliefs on the situation were that as a professional and as a new admissions counselor myself, um, very well aware of the code of conduct and the type of standards we have to set for ourselves. So I feel like you know that you're not supposed to drink on the job. You know that you're not supposed to do illegal drugs or all these other things, steal from university, etc. That all applies to any position you go into, but especially as a state employee and somebody who represents a larger body, like an institution of higher learning. It really does come down to you making those decisions to not partake in these actions and these activities. Um, I would say also that because we are working with students and we're surrounded all the time by a lot of people that watch the university, we can't be role models and we can't do our jobs 100% if we're not in the right state of mind. That comes into play with even in admissions with my student workers. They look to us, for guidance and for that professional level. So if they see me, just like in the situation, Tim saw Dan drinking in the car. Any student could walk by and see the same thing. So what is the message that sends our student workers and the rest of our students here at the university? Um, so after I came back and met with Dan, or sorry, when I came back and met with Tim, I actually provided some information on things that I thought I would do differently in the situation, and he also told me what his final decision was. Um, but going back, just to kind of give some reference, there were a few code of conduct issues and code of ethics that I kind of associated with in the situation that I brought to the table in my second interview with my assistant director. The first being the uh, the code of conduct for the state of Maryland. There is a state of Maryland substance abuse policy, and there's a federal drug-free workplace act of 1988. And this act states that the first time a sensitive employee is convicted of the first time a sensitive employee is found under the influence of alcohol while at the workplace, the employee shall be suspended for 15 days and required to successfully participate in an alcohol treatment program designated by the university's faculty staff assistant program. This is key as it is a state school. The university has its own policies, and the state of Maryland has its own policies set to kind of help faculty and staff that fall into the situation. So it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to get fired altogether, but they want to make sure that there's some kind of help for these people to utilize and use these resources to get better and get the treatment that they do need. In addition to that, there are the ACPA ethical standards as well. A couple of these, I'll just go down the list of the ones that I thought played into this. First was personal responsibility and competence. This is section 1.4, and it states monitor their personal and professional functioning and effectiveness, and seek assistance from appropriate professionals as needed. Second is the responsibility to the institution. This is section 3.1. Is contribute to their institution by supporting its mission, goals, policies, and abiding by its procedures. 3.6 is inform supervisors of conditions or practices that may restrict institutional professional activity effectiveness. So 3.1, clearly Dan is violating this code of conduct, and then for 3.6, this is where Tim's could possibly face breaking this ethical standard as well if he does not say anything to his supervisor about the actions that he did see. Finally, the responsibility to society states section 4.5, report to the appropriate authority any condition that is likely to harm their clients and or others. Again, if Tim doesn't say anything, this goes beyond just the effects on Dan, but if Dan was to then drive or to talk or have an altercation with someone because he was under the influence, this can again have a negative effect. Finally, what I said I would do is basically report it to the supervisor at hand. It is the duty as a employee that we have to hold ourselves accountable. There's no excuse for the situation and for the activity that Dan decided to do. If he values our friendship, then he'll understand that after everything, he needs to respect the fact that my professional actions and friendships are two different things, and being able to separate that personal life from professional life is definitely key. the policies that are instated right now state that the person will be suspended or be reviewed for a couple days or weeks there, but they're not necessarily fired. That again will come at the discretion of the department, I'm sure, later on. Um, let's see. Finally, what my assistant director said that he actually did was he did have a conversation with his colleague about the situation, but he kind of forewarned him that he, instead of blindsiding him, he told him that he would be reporting it, but he wanted him to know firsthand from his mouth that this was the action he was going to take, and these were the reasons why. At least that way he could get a better understanding as to why my assistant director decided to report him and why he needed to do it, both from a moral, ethical, and finally a professional standpoint as far as a responsibility as a university employee. The situation the after the situation happened, the other admissions counselor, Dan, was actually suspended for 2 weeks, where after he returned, he had to participate in some of those courses that I referred to earlier in the policy. But shortly thereafter that, he did find that he actually switched universities, so Dan did not stay at the university that they were working at for very much longer. But talking to my assistant director, he said that that was one of the more difficult things that happened to him at the very beginning because there was no real guidance. He never experienced something like that. And then that caused him to later on view other ethical issues that would come up in a way where he would always stay the course and make sure that he was sticking to whatever ethical principles and standards the university he was working at guided him or told him what to do, but he also incorporated some of his own personal views on a situation, like he did with Dan, to kind of reach out and give that courtesy of, hey, I'm letting you know ahead of time that this is going to happen, so they would at least prepare themselves and understand kind of what was coming before they would just be blindsided. So again, this was my interview. I hope you guys have I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you have any questions or comments, please comment, please write below, and I'll be sure to respond to you all. All right, thank you.